Planet Dolan.
From foretold home invasions to unprovoked attacks, we look at 7 terrifying unsolved Halloween mysteries. Number 7. Johnny Frank Garrett. On Halloween in Texas, 1981, an elderly nun was raped and murdered. The town of Amarillo was so terrified by the incident that the cops were forced to accuse a patsy to take the fall. This man was Johnny Frank Garrett. Suffering from a mild intellectual disability, he was 17 at the time of the murder and lived across the street from the convent. The shoddiness of the investigation knew no bounds. Police claimed Johnny confessed, despite the tape recorder conveniently being turned off for that part of the interview. Vital evidence was thrown away. None of the hairs found at the crime scene were Johnny's. They had found fingerprints at the convent that matched, but everyone knew that he had been at the convent often. He helped the nuns out from time to time. Despite all of this, Garrett was found guilty and was executed in 1992. If this guy had a better lawyer, or if we had Netflix 25 years ago, he might have been found innocent. So who the hell really raped and murdered a 76-year-old nun? Well, that's a case for another documentary. Making a Murderer. Eat your heart out. Number 6. Christy Lynn Vorak. 13-year-old Christy disappeared on Halloween in the year 1982. She was last seen at her foster home in Tacoma, Washington. Now, it wasn't unusual for her to go on walks around the neighborhood, but a 30-year stroll is probably pushing it. While her mother makes claims that Christy is most likely alive and well, most people just write it off as a crackpot theory considering how long it's been since she disappeared. In 1993, Christy's name was added to a list of probable victims of the Green River serial killer, Gary Ridgway. Ridgway was active in the area she disappeared in during the early 80s, and he targeted runaways and prostitutes. But as Christy was neither, there are many people that dispute the conclusion. Number 5. The Chelsea Bruck disappearance. In 2014, Chelsea Bruck was seen leaving a Halloween party in Michigan. But this party wasn't some rinky-dink get-together. It was one of those be-all, end-all parties with more than 700 attendees. The size of the party made Chelsea's disappearance that much more difficult to solve. After all, in a crowd that size, the comings and goings of the guests are hardly noticed. Chelsea was seen leaving with a man that police have never been able to identify. 6 months after her disappearance, Chelsea's costume was found in an abandoned industrial site, and 3 weeks later, all hope of finding Chelsea alive were gone. Her remains were found on a property about 10 miles from where she was last seen. More than a year later, the police still haven't made any breakthroughs in solving this murder. Number 4. Tony Baggley. A family outing on Halloween ended in tragedy when they were sprayed with bullets. In 1994 in Vegas, the mom and the aunt of the 7-year-old Tony were taking the kids out trick-or-treating. As they were walking to one of the houses, a hooded figure ran up to the family and opened fire on them before taking off in a waiting car. Tony was shot in the head. Tony's mom was shot in the chest, his aunt in the leg, and his older sister was hit in the abdomen. Police investigated whether the senseless crime was somehow related to the gangs in the area, or if whether or not the family had a member involved in illegal activities. More than 20 years later, no new information has emerged about Tony's tragic death, and police are no closer to understanding a motive for the crime or finding the killer. Number 3. Chaim Weiss. On November the 1st, 1986, police were called to a Jewish Orthodox school on Long Island. The body of Chaim was discovered in his dorm room, a 16-year-old student whose spinal column had been severed in his sleep. Detectives believe that the killer was familiar with Orthodox Judaism because a number of their customs were observed. The window was slightly open, which in Judaism is to allow the soul of the deceased to leave. A rabbi from the school was allowed to leave a candle burning in Chaim's room before it was closed off for further investigation. But when police returned to the crime scene, another candle had been placed in the dorm room. Detectives polygraphed 40 students and most of the staff at the school. The detectives couldn't find any suspects or motive for the killing, and to this day, 30 years later, it remains a mystery. Number 2. Veronica Safransky. In 1996, dressing as Pocahontas for Halloween was basically the bee's knees of costumes, even for white chicks. Veronica certainly caught someone's eye because she was seen leaving a bar in Minnesota with a man named Kevin Skirvin. And then, Veronica was never seen or heard from again. Part of her costume was found on a road about half a mile from the bar, but after an extensive search, police couldn't find any further evidence. As it turned out, Kevin had a rap sheet a mile long, all of them for sexual assaults. He admitted to leaving with Veronica, but he insists he doesn't know what happened to her after that. With no evidence to speak of, Kevin hasn't been charged, but he certainly sounds shady as fuck. Friends of Veronica have said that the police department did a shoddy job of the investigation, and that as a result, there may never be closure for her loved ones. Number 1. Ronald Sisman and Elizabeth Platzman. In the early hours of Halloween morning 1981, a couple were brutally slain in their home. The apartment was completely ransacked, the couple brutally beaten before being shot, execution style. As if the killings were not enough, they were actually predicted by none other than the serial killer, David Berkowitz, also known as the Son of Sam Killer. An inmate came forward after the slayings of Ronald and Elizabeth to say that Berkowitz told him weeks before Halloween that Ronald had a snuff film of one of the Son of Sam murders. Ronald was apparently planning to hand the evidence in to the police in order to avoid persecution for drug charges. Unfortunately, that's as much information as the inmate had gotten out of Berkowitz, and he refused to answer any further questions from the police. But the theory only furthered suspicions that Berkowitz had not committed his crimes alone. It seems I must leave you now, mortals, but don't worry. I shall return.
But what do I know? Maybe the real Wayne is just a sweet, sweet misunderstood soul, and she's gonna fix him. You don't even understand him. Or maybe she just really hates prostitutes, and this is her way of finding somebody who shares her passion.